Hello, and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media with me, Kathleen Ratorne. We're an organisation that aims to connect people in social media by holding live interviews about conservation around the world. Today, I am very happy. I am joined by Mónica Malvido, and she is based in Mexico. Today, we are going to be talking all about her role as a ranger, but as well as her work alongside the International Ranger Federation. So, Monica, I'm going to hand over to you. If you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved into conservation.
Sure. Thank you, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you from all over the world in Mexico. My name is Mónica Alvarez. I started my conservation work since I was a little girl. I think I always felt that connection to nature. However, I was born and raised in Mexico City, so it's one of the, as you know, the biggest cities in the world. So it's not really like the easiest spot to get nature just around by, if you think so at the beginning. But actually, it does. If you go a bit of outside and you get the right people to meet, it's actually really easy. So since I was a little girl, I joined a mountain club when I was 7, and I think it was like the main entrance to my love for nature. And also I started diving when I was very young, thanks to my parents. So since I was little, I knew I wanted to do this. However, I was well aware that even though I loved animals and all that, I was really worried about the social inequality in my country. I grew up in a country that's very the wealth is very badly distributed, same as other countries in Latin America. So that social aspect really got me. And so I started to do a lot of volunteer work in rural communities since I was in high school. And then in university, I did international relations because I wanted to understand the social aspect and get to nature from sort of that perspective. And yeah, that's how I started. And then I joined some of the Mexican NGOs in conservation, a Mexican Fund for Conservation of Nature. Then I did some other Pronatura, that was another one. And then I did a sort of a shift to the government, the National Protected Area Commissions. And then I gladly joined the International Ranger Federation.
Now, you're our first guest that we've had on from Latin America, and we're super excited and happy to have you on. Now, each country has their own issues and their own kind of problems that they're facing, and the challenges, but also successes. What are the main issues that you're finding in Mexico, and how do you kind of combat that?
Well, it's a good question. If you think about it, actually, now that we work a lot with Latin America, it's very similar, the story. Like South America could be in an hour's flight very far away, but it's actually the same history and the same challenges. So with there is now we worked on and previously on a not with IRF in my previous work with a protected planet report of of Latin America, just focused on Latin America, to sort of see what was the reality like in the region dealing with protected areas. So uh, I mean, we have a lot of issues, obviously, due to we have a lot of resources. We're a region, and so if I mean, I'm going to talk more broadly about Latin America because I think it's more worth it. But I mean, we have this the most biodiverse region, actually, South America, the Amazon region. So we have so much biodiversity, and so many countries in Latin America are mega diverse. So that also put us, I mean, it's a great thing and it's an advantage, but at the same time, it leads to a lot of social problems and a lot of, you know, crime related activities, right? So all these issues, you have like the best and the worst, I would say, of many things. For example, and we were talking about deforestation, right? We have a lot of problems dealing with deforestation, but at the same time, for example, in Mexico, we have a lot of communities that do good practices with sustainable use of wood, and they sort of certify the wood. So we have the best and the worst, in a way, but we have common challenges as also wildlife crime. It's a big thing. We do have a lot of insecurity in many of the territories. So for the work of rangers, it's really challenging to do their jobs in the conditions they work in, right? So I think it leads to people that need to be very creative and have very good social skills and negotiation skills when they do their jobs, in a way, on the territory and the protected areas. So just in a general overview, for example, Latin America is the region with more, with the region with biggest coverage of protected areas. We have about 24% of protected areas, in total in the region, terrestrial, and 18 marine. So it's pretty high. It's actually above the IG target, the conservation targets. However, the struggle and the challenges is to get really effective management, and in the areas to have, to not be paper parks, but have the conditions to actually fulfill their objectives. But what it's not shown, I think it's worth sharing with everyone joining us today, is that we have so many diverse governance schemes, right? It's not maybe different from other regions in the world. In Latin America, we have a lot of indigenous peoples that live in the protected areas or in the surroundings and have their indigenous protected area sites, or private lands are very promising here in Latin America as well. So I think all those different sort of governance schemes make it interesting to work in protected areas and in conservation.
And you touched on it a little bit there as you were speaking. You were talking about wildlife crime. What kind of wildlife crimes are you seeing? Because I know, again, from talking with people from different countries around the world, it varies from place to place. What are your typical examples that you're seeing? And does the government take it seriously? Is this something that they're trying to crack down on, or is it kind of brushed away under the carpet?
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, I know, as you say, it's very different. Sometimes the challenges in Africa or in Asia with dealing with wildlife crime. I think, especially in Mexico and obviously in other sites of Latin America, the organized crime is a big thing. They sort of, to say it honestly, they have control of a lot of the territory in Latin America, which makes it very difficult for people on the ground as rangers or community rangers or all the diverse type of rangers there are to do their work safely. So, for example, with the report of the life of the frontline, that is a report that WWF led a couple of years ago. In the region of Latin America, they asked the rangers, and it was a big amount of rangers in that survey, how dangerous they thought their job was, and they said 82% said it was dangerous to do their job. However, 98% said they were proud of it. So, that's a good sign as well, right? But so we deal with every type of organized crime, like people on the ground in Central America. They might be illegal mining or illegal different types of mining, but you also have drug dealers, but in a big scale sort of thing. So many countries like Colombia, Brazil, Ecuador, and the borders, so always sort of not competing, but they're in sites that are very difficult to work in. So the ranger job, it really is fascinating at the same time, because they do so much with so little, in a way. So their social skills and their negotiation skills and their ability to talk with different stakeholders, with tourists, with communities, to deal with these situations, it's really admiring how they manage to do it, right? So yeah, that's how it is in an overview.
For you, is there such thing as a typical day? What would you say would be like, or is there no such thing as a typical day? It all depends on what's happening.
Well, to be honest, it might vary a lot from who you ask, right? If you ask me that I work now in the city, well, it's very different. I just love my job because I'm always listening to rangers on the ground and their stories, right? They have so much to tell, and especially talking with Latin American rangers, you hear everything, right? For one, could be, they might work in very, very remote areas when they don't have any access to internet, so it's quite often isolated job in a way. It's quite isolated because they might not see a lot of people. But then you could also ask a city ranger that protects, areas in the near the city, might be very different. They go back to their homes after work, so they don't do like very long shifts. Not very long shifts. That some rangers stay 2 weeks on the area and then go back 2 weeks rest or 1 week rest or whatever. The country, it varies. But I think it's very fascinating when you ask them, because there's so much diversity, and they something I see very common is that they all see it as a way of life, like a vocation of life, not just a job, but it's part of the,
Yeah.
the everyday doing, right? Everything has to do, it's connected with everything they do every day. So that's very interesting to hear from them as well.
And for you, you're working in an industry traditionally when you're thinking about conservation, but especially when you start thinking about rangers, it's traditionally very much dominated by males. How have you found that working in the industry? Was it something that you noticed? Is that, I mean, I know, for example, in Africa that it is very male dominated. Is that the same in Latin America? And do women feel like this can be a career for them?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's actually one we take very seriously now in IRF. I mean, I think it's an issue global. It's a global issue that I don't know if maybe you or the audience has heard of the report we just published last year, that it's about gender and equity on the ranger workforce, led by Sonny G. Shiger. That it's the author, but it's a great study in which it sort of puts into data what we sort of already knew, that it's the big inequality in the ranger sector. No, less than 11% are women globally. So
Yeah.
that's a big thing, and so we needed to understand what's going on, right? And there's so many reasons related to that. For example, in Latin America, it's a big thing that the culture could be very machista, and I think that's even a word that should be left as it is. Like, it's a very, yes, male dominated, because the culture, it's not sometimes not even, it's not the rangers, it's the culture that puts so many costs or social, challenges to women to dedicate their lives to this. For example, they might say it's very common, and in so many countries, that they, because of their job, they need to go 1 week away or 2 weeks away to do patrolling or whatever they need to do for certain ranger task, that it has to go away from the 2 weeks. And it's very common that there's a lot of judgment of the society or the community where they live in. Since they work a lot with men, there might be comments of, well, what does she do so many days with men? So sometimes the culture is the thing that it sort of puts the locks, I would say. As in ranger teams, you don't feel that difference. And I think they recognize, and yeah, if you ask them, like, I mean, it's very common. They know they need the diverse roles and skills. So some roles could do either men or women, but obviously for some tasks, my and this is especially in Latin America. I think it could be quite different in other regions, as in Africa, but women can do certain jobs that require, I mean, ranger jobs, and men. So that sort of diversity makes a good teamwork and good. You need both, and it's not just about gender, but you need also other skill sets that have different types of rangers. It's not just based on gender, but diverse teams are important. As for me, I did have, in my personal life, I have had that feeling. Um, and it's funny, sometimes it even comes from the same females, right? It's not that it has to be for men. In my
Yeah.
personal experience, in a previous job, it came from a female, right? That, how are you going to go? We were going to put camera traps for, not camera traps, it was a live camera for golden eagles. It was great, like in the mountains. And I was the only woman. So of course I did get some judgment of, why are you going to do this if you're the only woman? Like, I'm like, well, it's the job, and I'm fine with it. But that sort of stories, you hear them a lot. So it's a challenge. And I think the opportunity there that some great females rangers are doing is sort of opening the doors for other kids. It's fascinating to see them so empowered and so and so proud of their work that they share it, and sort of that allows for a new generation. And I think that's we're finally seeing it everywhere, that and just recently was the Female Ranger Week, right? So you hear all these testimonies of female rangers doing great things, and obviously that invites other women to join in the workforce. So that I think it is changing, and it's great that it's changing so fast. But still, there's a lot to do. Not, as I said, not just with rangers, but with the employers of rangers or with society, right? Just sharing stories.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's only by having people such as yourself and other women out there that people can then look at you as an example and go, okay, it is a possibility, because if there's no one doing it, you feel like it can't be done. If there were like young girls looking at you and wanting to kind of emulate what you're doing, what would you say would be your key advice for them?
I would say totally do it. I mean, because you just feel it, right? It's I think, and it's a work or a job that you have to be your heart. You have to put your heart on it. So if you feel it, just go for it. It's gonna be challenging, of course, but and also something I discuss with my colleagues, my female colleagues, is like to feel proud of your femininity as well, to feel proud to be a woman, and just do it as you are, right? You don't have to change who you are to do the job. I mean, it's totally optional, but you don't have to, right? It's gonna be challenging, but you're always gonna find people who are gonna help you do with that. And I think that's important to have these sort of influence people in your life. These people in your life could give you that support, and also in the workforce, or in the whoever is your employer, to find those people that understand, because obviously in this you need men as well. You need men to do the change with women. It's not just a female thing, right? So yeah, I would say totally do it. It's totally worth it, but be yourself, and it's going to be tough, but you'll find others that are doing the same thing that can support you, because we need
Yeah.
you. We need women, and not only women. As I said, we need diverse roles, diverse skills for the profession. So there's room for everybody, really.
Exactly that. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not a case of saying one's better than the other. It's a case of saying that we've all got our own talents, our own skills that we can bring, and it's all for the common cause.
Exactly.
We have a question coming through from Winnie. Hi, Winnie. She's a regular viewer of the show and absolutely lovely to see her. And she is asking, is there a lot of animal crime, and how does the government punish these people?
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, the question, I don't know if it's for Mexico or Latin America, but I mean, of course there's a lot of wildlife trafficking. In Mexico, for example, we do get a lot of, like, of obviously like these big mammals or eagles or cacti. It's a very common thing that could be trafficked as well, because we have so much diversity of, yeah, it's cacti, right? You say it like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's punishments, but it's tricky because there is, the capacity of the government sometimes is not as it should be in order to do all the uh, procedures in place, right? So obviously you have other issues as corruption, and that as well is common in all these countries. So it is very tricky. It is not tricky. It's a big thing. It's very complicated. Sometimes there's not even a lot of information, but it does happen. So how does punish people? I mean, I think it just varies depending on what crime they did. Obviously, there is. I mean, it's not. I mean, it varies, right? If you are, and I think it's similar as other regions. If it's people living in the community, they might have certain benefits, or certain, permits or quotas to use wildlife. But obviously, sorry, if it's um, give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It happens.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, they're sort of different, obviously depending on what the crime is, but I think the main message is the capacity is limited, and even though there's a will, you get, for example, very poor paid jobs. I mean, not only rangers but frontline other professions like a policeman or policewoman are very poorly paid, so that puts more pressure and more challenges.
And then we discussed it kind of briefly at the start that you've been working alongside the International Ranger Federation. Now they look at rangers across the world in general, in all different capacities of what they're doing. And I understand that they've been working on a report called the State of the Ranger Report. I know that a lot of it aims to kind of answer some kind of very important questions about how rangers are supported and valued. I guess it varies hugely depending on the location and what they're doing. But what kind of things are you finding so far?
Okay, yes, we're about to lead this first ever State of the Ranger report, which is very exciting because there's so many questions to be answered about rangers or ranger work. There's so many questions that we still don't have the answers, right? We still don't know how many rangers there are. There's a paper that's going to come out soon of how many rangers we have, for example. But being such a diverse workforce, it also, I mean, it is the value of it, but it also puts challenges, right, on how you sort of englobe them all, right? So the idea is to publish a report every World Ranger Congress about the state of the ranger. Where's the profession? Where, like, sort of put a baseline to see where are we improving, where are we not, especially on the sort of demands of the rangers. For example, in the last World Ranger Congress that it was in Nepal, certain topics were raised by rangers in a declaration, right? So we took sort of mainly those needs and included in the framework to start tracking what is needed. For example, the report will have obviously demographics, and then a bit of a welfare section, a capacity section. Where's the capacity of rangers, the current capacity of rangers? Also about relationship with communities, that is super important. And a bit about ranger associations, that's very important as well. And recognition. So it's 7 sections. So far in this year, we have developed sort of the framework. We have the framework ready. It was a very interesting process because when you want to do it representatively, like you need to include voices from every region, and at the same time, it's virtual, everything, all the job, right? So we had fascinating working sessions with rangers and ranger associations and regional ranger association and experts on certain issues, and it was fascinating to the framework. So we have the framework. The next step would be to do the data collection, and then finally on the next Congress, the World Ranger Congress, will publish the results, and the idea is to track those improvements every 3 to 4 years. I mean, the challenge, it was also to do it, since it's very general. You have to do it general, because if you do it too narrow or too specific, then it's going to be challenging to do it for all the regions, right? So it's been an interesting process, and we hope that with this report, we can also use not only for rangers, but also to sort of influence decision-making on how conservation is financed or how conservation is defined. Because sometimes it's very common that decision makers, and in a good, I'm not saying in a bad way, it just happens that sort of ignore the human aspect, right? They can set all these ambitious targets, which are important, obviously, like the 30 by 30, that would be the next target. But where's the social or the human component? So we hope that with this report and other reports that we're doing, we can sort of influence that decision making, and sort of to put rangers in the in the front. You cannot ask to put so many targets without the support of the people on the ground. So that's why.
For sure. We've got a question coming through from Jason Staples, and he's asking, could the details that you're putting in these reports, could that kind of be then used against you by cartels?
To be honest, I think he asked about this report that I don't think at all that could happen, because it's not, it will not have information that would put rangers at risk, first of all. It would just talk about how the profession can be improved, and we need to be careful on that, because sometimes there's this perception that, and I'm just going to put an example, right? That if they have weapons, they're going to do a better job, right? For example, while in Latin America, and I said it depends on the region, I know it's very different. Rangers, for example, do not use weapons. Very few countries like Argentina and Costa Rica can have firearms on certain conditions. But rangers on this side of the world sort of are very different. So for example, it wouldn't be an issue to have what they need is better skills, right? Better skills, better working conditions. They need, for example, insurance schemes. They're not insured. They do all these risky jobs. And risky, I also mean not only with dealing or encountering illegal groups, but also the job itself could be dangerous because it's remote areas. So sometimes if they break a leg and they're in the mountain, that puts their life in risk if you don't have the right situations to get out of the right equipment to get out of that situation, right? So what we really want to do is, or so many, for example, ranger deaths are led by fires or by droughts or by drowning. So what the idea is that we could focus better where the deaths can be avoided, and sometimes if you have the proper capacity, you could reduce those deaths. So
Yeah.
I don't think it would be an issue with that.
I know, for example, when because we've got World Ranger Day coming up, and this is World Ranger Month as well, and there's a few organisations that publish the cause of deaths for rangers. It's quite a sobering read, but a lot of the times it is as well. It's as you mentioned, it's the environment they're living in, the wild animals that they're protecting themselves. That they're dangerous animals. So there's a lot of different factors. So it is, as it goes back to what you say, just trying to get them the training for like swimming and how to deal with fires and lesions and things like that. Now, a lot of rangers come from the local communities, and I know that that's something that the report has been looking at a lot, and kind of how it fits into, it works alongside local and indigenous communities. What's it like in Latin America? What do the local communities traditionally see wildlife conservation as? Is it something that they want to protect, or is it something that still needs a lot of work and a lot of education? And then how does having someone local feed back into that?
I like this question. I'm obviously parting that it's a huge universe, Latin America, but to be honest, when you talk to, many indigenous peoples just see it as a way of life, not really like we need to protect nature. They just have this cosmovision in their lives they use the resources in a way that, it's going to be sufficient for us. So they really are the ones that sometimes teach either rangers or visitors, So in Latin America, what is very common is that these people live inside the protected area. So you don't have, it's very, this sort of old model of old fortress conservation, like what was Yellowstone in a way in the beginning, and that model, you don't really see it in Latin America. Obviously there are some private areas that might not have people in them, but you generally deal with protected areas with people, indigenous peoples living inside. We have over 500 indigenous groups just in tropical South America. So it's so diverse, right? And it's like you don't really see the line like you're a ranger or you're from the community. It's not really like that. It's like you might have rangers that are from the community. That's very common. Local community or indigenous community. Or there are other cases that they're not rangers and they don't want to be rangers. They want to live their own, they want to live their lives as they are, but they work together with the rangers for better outcomes. And there are so many great stories about positive collaboration between indigenous groups and rangers. Just to say one, in Ecuador, we had in our ranger roundtables, we had a ranger from Ecuador there saying how they didn't have a boat to do the patrolling. They didn't have the funding to get a boat to do the patrolling in the Amazon. So since they had a very good relationship with the community, the indigenous community there, the community was sort of supported them, helping them sometimes to do the patrolling with their boat. Another thanks to now they have a boat. We thanks to the Think Green Line Foundation, IRF, and the Association of Ecuador, they now have a boat to do their patrolling. So that also has benefited the people, the indigenous peoples, right? So just say it's not very, it's not white and black, like it's so blurry, that line. So, and we have so much different levels of mestizos, like everyone's mixed. It's not in Latin America. So yeah, as I said, rangers might come from communities or indigenous communities or the cities, but it's not really an issue. But it is so important to have, for a ranger in Latin America to have a good relationship with the community. It's the most important thing. Otherwise, they won't be able to do their job. And sometimes they do. I was talking to a ranger the other day from South America. I can't remember which country it was, and I think it was Ecuador, but another side as well. And he told me, yeah, what we really do is, since we don't have that, the possibility of wearing firearms or whatever, when we see a crime, or it's not sometimes not us, it's the community that reports to us that they are seeing, illegal groups entering, and we go with the next authorities. The military would be there, but they just do like the intelligence service, like filtering the information of what's going on, so the other authorities could do their job. So yeah, having good relationship with the communities is basic, and I think we have very good stories to share here. There's a report actually we just published of IRF and ORSA and the Universal Ranger Support Alliance, that is called Community Trust, and it's sort of all these case stories of how rangers and communities build trust together, right, on both sides. And also there's another volume, Community Trust as well, that it's all like a 100 sort of very basic and easy recommendations of things to do that can help to that. And sometimes they're the most simple things, like go and have coffee with them, go and have for a walk with them, just listen to what they see, listen what's important for them, and find a common ground, right? So all these studies that you can find available in our website and in ORSAS are very good for rangers worldwide to see tips on how to improve this relationship.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think you summed it up really well there. Is basically every community's got its different challenges and its different things that it's facing. So you can't go in with a one size fits all approach. You have to be speaking with them. What are their challenges? And also sometimes they're the ones that are giving you guys the solutions, right? They're going to be saying, well, this has worked, and then maybe that can work at another place as well.
Totally. Yeah, totally. You need, I think, an advice not advice, but you need also the employers to understand that, to understand that rangers need to dedicate time to sit with them and listen to them. And sometimes they have to do it in non-working hours because they see the value, right? But it should be part of the working hours to allocate this time to spend with the community. And sometimes they even end up, painting schools together and stuff, like it's way over their job, but they do it because it's very important to build that trust and that relationship.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've been talking a lot about the work that rangers are doing, and I mentioned it earlier at the start that it is World Ranger Month, and we're coming up to World Ranger Day at the end of the month. Why do you think this is important? Do you think it's something that rangers appreciate? Is it something that helps build awareness? What are your thoughts about that?
About World Ranger Day, I think it is a great opportunity to sort of listen and people to pay attention to what's going on in the ranger world. Um, Also to sort of, you know, when what is I going to say? Sorry. It's a great way of putting the rangers up there on the front and saying these are their stories. There's so much stories to be told and to be listened to that they are not. So I think it's a great opportunity to raise awareness, to invite people, to invite young people as well to join, uh, and to see what rangers look like in the world, because sometimes we have this stereotype of what a ranger is. And I might be talking for myself, but when I was younger, that ranger profession is not so valued yet here in Mexico. I mean, not that it's not valued, it's not really seen, or it's not as other countries, which, like in Africa and many countries, that you have this big stereotype of a ranger, very strong, doing all the field work and dressed in khaki. That, of course, they are very important rangers. I mean, every ranger counts a lot, but there's so much more that in our minds we don't see as rangers that are rangers too, right? Like, they might look different, they might be indigenous, they might be from private areas. So I think it's a great way of sort of putting it out there to for the people to see how different rangers may look, so they can approach them when they go visit. Who doesn't like to visit a protected area, right? uh, so when they go to a protected area, they get close to a ranger and ask them what's their job like. Because really, if you think about it, it's the people that protect, even for people that lives in the cities, like, and I say this to people in Mexico City, all the services you get, it's because there's someone protecting that source, right? So you have to think that every time you buy food, because someone sort of protected the whole chain, that you could get this. So they're really safekeepers of the earth, and they really should be recognized as, like, planet health professionals. And so far, they don't even have the recognition by the ILO, International Labor Organization, as a profession. So there's so much work to do. um, we're working there. They've been great listening to us, but I mean, there's so much to do in this cause that World Ranger Day, it's really an opportunity to sort of put it out there, that people start knowing what a ranger is, what they do, how important they are for their lives, and not just out there in the wild, right? They do have a connection to everyone. So I think that's worth saying and sharing.
Exactly that. I mean, I think people, especially as you mentioned, in cities, might not really appreciate that they're basically alive because they're breathing and eating because of these people that are protecting these incredible biodiversity spaces. So, yeah, it's an awesome job. And I think a lot of times, as you mentioned, rangers don't get recognized, and they should be recognized. So it's really important that they kind of get the recognition that they deserve. What would you say for you then? So you've got this report coming out, and then you've got the Congress coming up next year. What's your hopes then for the future?
Well, as a personal, I mean, we're doing so much first with IRF besides the report, and I mean, there's so much going on, so people can know. There's gonna come out a study of how ranger associations also work. It's gonna come out soon, and what's the value of a ranger being part of an association, right? It really is showing that it gives them this sense of belonging and this common ground to share. As I said, it's a very isolated job, and sometimes the best resource, it doesn't have to be economic. It might be just, I mean, there's so many things that add value, right? To have this community that supports you, that understands you, that sort of gives you the capacity that you need, right? There's so much to do. So ranger associations are playing a huge role. We're doing also leading an study of indigenous state rangers to find their perceptions that they've never really heard. So to put more attention there. There's so much going on. We're going to the ranger roundtables as well, to hear experiences and lessons learned from different rangers to deal with everyday challenges, right? Maybe the solution has been found somewhere else by another ranger. So just making the links between them so they get access to this. So there's so much to do. I hope I can stay as long as I can in the IRF to do so many things, get the profession recognized, get also the capacity, but And that's also important to understand that the capacity is going to change depending when you are, right? So we need very strong regional ranger associations to sort of help each other on that, to have the capacity needed for each region. And yeah, what else? I mean, just keep saying and keep influencing decision makers. Now that the new targets are coming, and other sectors that might not pay attention, they need to start pay attention, because they need to see that, for example, the carbon market is growing so fast, right? But who's gonna protect that carbon that you are investing on, right? That is super important to invest in carbon offset and all. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that they need to understand that it has, in order to have that carbon offset, you need to sort of also protect the people who protect that, right? So to take care of the people that take care of us. So I think there's so much to do. I hope that people listening, if they have any way they can support the IRF or rangers worldwide from what they're doing, please reach out and let us know. It's not just resources. Sometimes it's so many other things. So.
I'm just bringing up the website there so people can have a look at that. So please do, as she said, have a look and check it out. Sometimes it is resources, sometimes it's volunteering your time. You might have a skill that you might not think is useful, but actually there's so many different things that go into conservation that you might not even think about, whether that be bookkeeping, social media. There's so many different things that
yeah. Sorry. I was social media. I forgot to say that. Yeah.
And do like, follow, comment, and share on their social media posts as well. Again, the more people that see it, the more people can be aware of what's happening. And that goes for this show as well. If you are watching and you like it, please do give it a like, comment, and share. Again, it all helps to raise awareness for the incredible work that other people are doing. So Monica, I've only got one more question left, and then we're going to start to wrap up. If you've got a question that you would like to put to Monica, please pop it in the comments section and I will do exactly that for you. If you're watching this and it's no longer live, you're watching it at your own leisure, but there is a question that you would like to ask, again, please do put it in the comments section and I will make sure that someone will get back to you with a response for you. So Monica, I know that we've been talking about a lot of the challenges and the things that people are facing, but also there are some highs as well that go alongside that. It's not always bleak. Have you got a favorite success story?
Actually, yes. I mean, there are many, and as you said, sometimes we just hear the bad news and not the great news. But it's great when I listen to all these national associations get together and finalize the association and just put it out there. For example, we're working now with the Latin American Ranger Federation, and they just entered as provisional members to IRF, and we really want to support them, and as well as other regional associations or national associations to finalize their statute. So I think success stories you hear every day, very localized, in just listening how their achievements with, I don't know, they could be very specific things due to their specific jobs. But I mean, I've heard the other day something like, and I love this. It was a ranger in Mexico that went to a community, and that every time she just sort of walks by, all the kids are like, oh, they just see her like a hero, they just see her like a hero. And now she knows that, for example, their parents used to get this sort of plant that it was forbidden to use, but now the kids are the ones telling their dads and moms, like, you cannot do this, or this ranger, I'm not going to say her name, this ranger is going to come and let you, like, suddenly you realize that how great it is to influence the youth and the kids. And I've listened this from rangers everywhere, that once they get, their kids to understand and absorb in more easier ways than the adults that we're so fixed, the kids are just like sponges that absorb anything. So I do think that is a positive, like a very positive story that will be shown in a couple of years or a bit more. All these kids that have been influenced by rangers and ranger work, that they're gonna, sort of defend that. Because if you don't get that when you're a kid, I think it's very hard that you get it later. That was my thought. Otherwise,
I completely agree. I mean, a lot of people I know that are in conservation have been passionate about it from a very young age. Not really understanding what conservation was, obviously, but just being passionate about wildlife and wild spaces. And as you say, they are such sponges, and adults, unfortunately, do have a tendency to be very fixed in their way of mind, and trying to change that can be very complicated. We have a question coming through from Claudia, and she is asking, what is the most important issue you would address to authorities and would like to see changed?
Thank you. I like that question. I mean, I think the working conditions of rangers in many countries, especially, as I said, in Latin America and in Mexico, are not as they should be. I think it's a so much needed profession, but very poorly rewarded. And by that, I mean contracts. Sometimes they don't have contracts, or they don't have insurance schemes. Insurance. I think every ranger should have insurance. They do such a risky profession, right? And their families are like, so I would love to see, as for in Mexico, for example, that the ranger was recognized as a profession by law. Currently, it is not, and respected as it should be, and that includes, all the gender issue that we discussed before. So I think better conditions so rangers could do their work without putting themselves at risk. That would be like what I really like to see change. So just as Claudia suggests, I think there's a lot to do working with them, with employers of rangers. And employers, that is thinking of rangers that are hired by the government, but it could be also private, or there's so much diverse type of employers, but I think authorities should recognize the profession but as a start, and then give the ensure that they have the conditions to do it safely in whatever context they are. It might change from one country to another, but find out what are those conditions for they to do their work safely.
Yeah, I think it's the training and the insurance, because as you say, it's a very risky job. So even if it wasn't something that ended up being terminal, they might be injured and then can no longer work and then can't support their families. And one person can provide a lot of their income, can provide a lot of help for a lot of people in one community or one family. So taking them out is a very big deal. So yeah, I completely agree that insurance is something that's very, very important. Thank you so much, Monica. I've absolutely loved having you on the show. We've had some lovely feedback as we've been talking. We've had people watching from all different areas around the world. Always lovely to see. We've had people in Thailand, Uganda, America, Nigeria, England, and probably many more that I've missed off. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And again, if you have liked it, please do give it a like, comment, and share, because it does really help to raise awareness for the work these people are doing. Monica, before we go, is there anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye?
And just to add up, also mental health. We didn't say that, but it's as important, right? That they have the conditions for mental health that sometimes is not even considered. Well, to the rangers that are listening, I'm really happy, and I'm really happy to work in IRF, and you are my heroes, and thank you for your job, and also all the frontline professions. I think we should see them for what their value is really. But rangers, you have all my respect, so thank you for all your work. And if you're a kid or a young person that are interested in the job, just go in. You could have very different skill sets, and it doesn't matter. There's room for everyone.
100%, definitely. I don't think I could sum it up any better than that. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for watching back home. Really appreciated it. But for now, from me, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Good night.